Hi, this is Derek, and today's video I want to share with you an interesting idea that I recently discovered that I think will really prove a point to you. And the theme of today's video is what video games can teach us about getting things done. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, you know, what can video games teach us about getting things done? But I'm going to ask you to hear me out, okay, and explain to you exactly what I mean by this and how you can use it. So, first of all, I'm not a big video game player, but I know a lot of people who are, and so I'm kind of familiar with the psychology behind video games and what makes them so appealing, and I'm talking about everything, you know, from Farmville to Mario games and whatever it may be. You may be familiar with some of these. If you're not, I think you'll still understand the principles that I'm going to be talking about. So, when you think about video games, they're hot, right? People just love playing video games, and a lot of people spend hours and hours playing video games. And I got to thinking about this, and I was thinking, what is it that drives them to play these games and spend so much time on them? And as I got to thinking about it, and with my limited knowledge of most video games, it really didn't matter, but I found some key reasons why I think these video games are so popular and why people enjoy them. And when you look at most video games, they have most of them have two elements that I think drives people's interest in playing them. First of all, you're given an objective to reach, right? So you have this outcome that you need to reach. In some of the games that I've seen, like I'm partially familiar with Farmville, which is popular on Facebook, I guess, but you know, you have this objective. You've got to reach these goals, these objectives, in order to get a better farm or something like that. And if I got this wrong, forgive me, but I think that's the general idea, is that you have to plant so much and get so much money and have so much, so your farm has to be working so well before you get a bigger farm. Okay, so you have this clear objectives. Now, that's element number one. Element number two that I think is you'll find in most games is that there's a deadline, right? So you don't just have forever to reach your goals. Now, maybe in Farmville you do, I'm not really sure, but a lot of games you have an objective and you have a time frame or a deadline within which you have to complete a task in order to get to the next level. So you have clear objectives and you have deadlines. And when you watch people play these games, they're like, oh, I've got to get this, I've got to get this, and they're watching the clock and they're doing all these things, I've got to do that, and I've got to move this over here, and I've got to change this. And they're playing this game with such intense motivation because of these two factors, clear outcomes and deadlines, right? It just drives them to spend hours doing and playing this game. And when I realized that, recently, I thought, oh, that's interesting, because that's exactly what I like to do when it comes to managing my time through the system of time boxing, which I've talked about a lot, and which is built into the Action Machine. And so I thought about the correlation, how these relate to each other, and if people could take that mindset that they have in playing the video games and how they spend sometimes hours upon hours doing those things and transfer that into real life, it's the same principles. You know, they're motivated by outcomes and deadlines to reach those outcomes. Why not take those same driving principles, motivating principles, and apply them to your real life? Define clear outcomes and give yourself deadlines to reach them. That's what time boxing is all about, which I'm a big fan of, as you know. You create a list of all the things you need to do, and then you give each one of those items on the list a time frame or a deadline to reach it, or an amount of time that you want to set aside to complete it, and then you go to work. That's exactly what you're doing in a video game. And it motivates people. Obviously, it works like nobody's business, because if it didn't, these video games wouldn't be as so popular. So think about, if you're a big video game player, and these things that I'm saying make sense to you, but you may be having a hard time getting things done, or even if you're not a video game player, you realize that there's a real power this idea of setting outcomes and giving them deadlines has real power to motivate you to take action, all right, and put it to use in the real world to get things done. All right, so that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? Would you like 20 more just like it that explain to you how to take more action and finally get things done, all for free? Well, then visit www.theactionmachine.com. Once again, that's www.theactionmachine.com.